Hey folks, this is a follow-up video for my Rimworld problem, highlighting some of the responses and suggestions as well as potentially clarifying a couple of points made previously. It felt only right to do this after so many people clearly spent a lot of their time sharing their thoughts around the issue. If your comment isn't mentioned in this video, that doesn't mean that it wasn't valid. I read absolutely everything that people posted. I'm simply sharing the ones that I have more of my own thoughts around, rather than just doing the React streamer thing and saying, yep, that's right, every few seconds to about 250 replies. So once again, there's B-roll footage in the background, which is actually taking some of these suggestions on board, and I'll be showing the comments that I'm talking about on screen when relevant. If you are here for gameplay, sorry, this is more of a vibe and discussion piece. The first comment was a big one that jumped out to me, by Caitlin Kitty. If any raid, no matter the difficulty, can be overcome by simply leaving and never coming back, then difficulty, at least in terms of raid points, is no longer meaningful. Might as well just lower the difficulty and allow raids small enough that they don't compel you to leave, and give you more freedom with how you can structure your settlement. I've been playing on losing is fun for so long now that that's just kind of how the game was for me. I'm not turbo-masochistic, so I've not got the game set to 500%, but I do feel like I understand the mechanics enough that I need the game to throw more at me to be an actual challenge. But, with that being said, if my response to that challenge is to run away, I may have kind of thrown the baby out with the bathwater there. This is just a really solid idea. If you had played previously on Losing is Fun, and since installing Odyssey feel like you are overwhelmed, this greatly helped me in getting some sense of stability back in my game. Virtual Saturn says, I can see where you're coming from, but as someone that really enjoyed the previous somewhat janky space mods, I am living for all the new potential brought about by Odyssey mechanics. There are mods like Layered Atmosphere and Orbit, Progression Worlds, and others that have so much potential to change the future of space travel mod packs, I find it all very exciting. And this is a really good point. There are mods out there to try and fix this problem. We also know that with the upcoming release of Vanilla Gravships Expanded, that's set to push the Gravship to be a much later thing in the tech tree. So you're going to have to have invested considerably more time into the game before you can decide if you just want to up and leave your tile, by which point, hopefully at least, you're going to have a bit more commitment to that living space. Kirkan comes in with a solid little comparison. The Gravship is a very strong commitment and is the complete opposite direction that the game has had for like a decade. Odyssey is conceptually good for a few thematic dedicated playthroughs. You control the buttons you press, but also that Grav Engine quest screams like the Green Goblin Mask. This is something that I have started to take on with the scenario editor in my game. Using the scenario editor, you can cancel certain quests from firing, such as the quest turning up to be able to accept a Grav Engine, or even disabling the Mech Strider ruins from spawning on your home tile. I'm still waiting for these settings to be more easily accessible in a checkbox kind of mod, where you can instantly turn on or off certain DLC specific content from spawning at the start of every single colony. But if you do find it very difficult to resist the siren call of those buttons, it might be worth having a look in the scenario editor and taking those buttons away from yourself, so you aren't tempted to press them. ThrashRats has a fantastic comment. Being able to make worse, unoptimized decisions for the sake of roleplay that I have of my colony and their place in Rimworld is truly a blessing. Please, go ahead and make worse choices. Don't have hyper-optimized armor sets, but ones that look cool. Don't build another caved-in outpost with a killbox. Make a castle, a village, a citadel. Just play a tabletop RPG and you'll pick this up with time. I'd never really took a step back and considered treating Rimworld in some way like D&D, meaning my colony is less of an organised armed militia and more a group of adventurers that have come together to work towards the same goal. Of course, this is one of those things that muddies the water a little bit, because everybody plays the game in different ways. Some people want to do meta progression and hyper-optimise the game. Other people want to lean far more on the story side. If you land somewhere in the middle where you understand enough of the game that you can optimize it, but you also still want a bit of challenge from it, I think that's where this difficult spot lies that many other people are currently feeling. Daisy306 says, it's a very first world problem. I don't think your issue is universal, but just a section of the player base, similar to the Anomaly DLC situation of liking or hating it. There was another good comment that really ties well into this. KalebStarDust said, my sauce is too buttery and my steak too juicy. Claim. Jokes aside, yeah, it's a moderation game when it comes to using gravships, a kind of choice so far that we've only had with mods. Example, Sidecast Expanded, like you mentioned in the video. Perhaps a system where the chances of flying away during a raid are lower, or maybe the landing is rougher due to sustained damage whilst you're flying away during a raid. A lot of bad events once you land are nothing burgers. The most you have to do is repair some damaged walls or replace some components. This raised a really interesting point for me. How many people before Odyssey have had to limit their own gameplay with base game or DLC related content, not workshop gear? I think there's a big difference here between what we expect from a DLC in terms of balance and what we would expect from a mod in terms of balance. So whilst a mod might hand us a whole toolkit as well as all of the settings to tweak it individually, a DLC you expect to be relatively well balanced from the get-go. I'd said in my response here that it feels like we're missing 2 or 3 major threats or events to balance out the power spike that we gain from these Odyssey mechanics. That's another thing that Vanilla Gravship Expanded is looking to do. Sometimes if you launch your ship, you're going to make too much of a signal and draw the attention of new raiders when landing on a tile. However, there was another comment that raised a really interesting suggestion. GregVideogames commented with, couldn't this be easily handled by raiders using some sort of gizmo that prevents takeoff either until the raid is beaten or for just a few minutes so that you have to have colonists outside defending the ship and then falling back once it's ready? That right there is top tier. We already have mechanoid clusters that land with problem generators, EMI dynamos, deforesters, climate adjusters. We also have raids that come in and drop siege equipment. Why do we not have a mix of the two? A human raid that drops a grav disruption device, something that sits physically on the map that you either have to mortar to destroy so you can take off, or fight your way out to deal with. This kind of thing could even drop some grav materials as your reward for it to further expand your grav ship for defeating that raid. If anyone out there is a mod developer and wants to give that a crack, that sounds like it could be a really good solution to me. The Ultimate Windlord says, wait, people are not playing Space Murder Hobo Pirates with the ship? I was, for a little while, and then I tried different things, and eventually the ship just became the escape button. Landlubber says, I've been enjoying playing with a shuttle and a static base. All the exploration benefits of a grav ship, but home is still home, and I can't just run away completely. This is something that I've started to limit myself to as well. I've removed both of the grav ship related quests from my game using Scenario Editor, so I don't get a grav engine crash on my map, nor does an entire grav ship crash further afield in the world, which means the only option I have in certain places is using a shuttle. This is again great if you find it really difficult not to press the button with certain things. We have a comment from the awesome fernyvideos. I have a very simple reason why I don't feel anything remotely like this, and it's mainly that I see Rimworld as an imagination prompting software rather than a game. If you see Rimworld as a game that should present itself to you in a way that perfectly engages with your current set of priorities, then you're approaching it wrong initially. There's nothing different between Rimworld and life itself. Your priorities and options are completely in your own hands. It takes strength, faith, and courage to choose and stand for something and execute on it despite choice paralysis, means of cheating, and other options. And those are real-world skills that need to be trained. The software we engage with as humans should push us to stand by those traits, and that for me is what makes the game so boldly exciting. In moments when I personally feel the way that you're describing in this video, I quickly ask myself, is this because I'm expecting this software to act for me, or am I lacking the vision right now to impose myself onto the software? I don't think entertainment, media, technology in general should exist to make us feel comfortable or sit back. It should only encourage us to imagine, have faith in what we're imagining, and stand by it even when cheap exits of that vision appear in front of us. It's up to us as people not to cheat with dev mode, not to lose faith in that vision that we're imagining, and I feel it's very important training to be human. I've watched several people in my real life learn skills of faith and commitment from playing a game long term, and attribute that strength that they can now apply in other areas of their life to those trials. What you're experiencing right now is a trial. One where you have the strength to stand for a vision and weaponize it onto the software. Make something beautiful, even if you can just dev mode it away or shuttle out. That's why I play this game, to test my faith and see how absolutely beautiful things can emerge that exist purely within the realm of imagination. Now, that's a much more philosophical take on this problem than I had initially expected to read. However, it rings true. Like a lot of other people have said, you don't need to press the button, you don't need to play in an optimized way. This game, if you're looking at it as a game, is a trial of your storytelling abilities. It's always really interesting to see what Rimworld is to different people as well. Because whilst I've got people saying, yes, they're having the problem and they're optimizing their game too much, we've got something from Ferny which is saying he doesn't even see it as a game. We also have people who say that they just play on peaceful and they're not having this problem because they don't need to deal with raids. It really is something for everyone, but because it's something for everyone, there becomes an onus on you to be the one to extract joy from the game. If you aren't finding joy within the game, it might be the approach that you're taking with it. Sanguinus says, I've got almost 15,000 hours in Rimworld. Jesus, dude. And since Odyssey, I have hardly played any. I'm not entirely sure why, but I think it does have something to do with there being too many options to progress towards. I would really like Ludeon, rather than putting in more content that's based on existing mods, to spend their dev time adding and expanding systems and capabilities to the game. Add in Z levels, or make other factions more meaningful, or give pawns proper personalities. I don't want yet another thing to do with a colony. Mods provide an infinite amount of that. I want more depth to the story. I feel like that's a really interesting thing that should be incorporated in running away from a raid as well. Presumably, if you do not deal with the raiders that turn up on your tile, they don't just sulk back to their base. They should go and try and hit another target, considering they have left armed and ready for a fight. Which means whoever was based closest to you would be the next sensible target to hit. We all know the diplomacy system in Rimworld needs some serious work anyway, but even taking off on a tile when there is a friendly trader present doesn't cause any problems, despite the fact that we know that the Gravship taking off destroys the tile. There's something missing here. Again, it's another one of those bits where it feels like there's 2 or 3 negative events that should have been included with Odyssey, and they're just not. Sylphidea says, I guess I'm confused. Are you blaming the game for the fact that you can only play in an optimized perfect way with no deviations ever and will always pick the best, most meta option? Because if you absolutely must look at everything in a manner like that instead of having fun with the game, I think I know where the problem actually is. There's a reason why people do tribal colonies despite charger rifles being a thing in the game. It's for the theme and roleplay. If you only ever play optimally, I'm surprised that adding a cute little house ship is the point where you're getting tired of the game. Now, I've responded in a comment to this, but I'll read it out so that everybody can kind of get the idea. I could play a tribal colony, never advance and just not die, because I understand wealth management and basic combat strategies within the game, which means Rimworld becomes incapable of throwing a meaningful threat my way unless I am purposefully making the worst decisions possible. And I mean like stockpiling thousands of raw food, steel, stone, whatever, just to purposefully inflate my colony wealth, knowing that we don't have the equipment to counteract it. So playing a tribal colony doesn't mean that I have to play them as complete idiots either. We know that this tribe is surviving on a planet that already has mechanoids, insects, enemies with assault rifles, so they must have been able to survive long enough to grow into adulthood with threats like this around. They are not stupid just because they're tribal. That same logic goes across if my colonists have access to a Gravship. If the colonists have access to simply lift off and immediately escape a threat, why would they not? It's the most sensible thing for them to do in that given situation because it ensures the best chance of survival for the largest amount of people. Prior to Odyssey, I had to engage with every mechanic that the game had because it made sense to do so. The tile that we lived on was home. We could try to flee when enemies turned up, but without modding in other ways of leaving the map, this normally meant people would try and caravan to a point and then walk off towards a random direction that they chose, which might take them right through the centre of the raid. Basically meaning they were guaranteed to die. So standing and fighting was the obvious best option because it kept our base intact, we saved all of our materials, and it lowered the chance of injury rather than walking through the enemy. If the whole solution to that line of logic is, well, you shouldn't use a Gravship then what am I buying the expansion for? It's probably a third, if not more, of the point of buying Odyssey. To further expand on the point I raised earlier around previous DLC not having this problem, if you went the route of royalty, you would have to build larger, more expensive rooms for your nobles, which again increased your wealth and made raids harder. Unlocking Psychas via the anima tree took time, and there was no guarantee that the Psychas you would unlock were going to be useful. With ideology, you get things that give you both benefits and restrictions on what your colony can make use of. Biotech has a whole bunch of options, like sanguiphages that require death rest and hemogen. The Mechanator takes a massive amount of wealth and steel before they can start really getting up and running, and then when they are working, you've got waste packs to deal with. Children are super vulnerable while they're growing up and take a very long amount of time to reach adulthood before they're useful. Anomaly gave you a lot of new tools, but it also threw a heap of new threats at the colony to counterbalance that spike in your power. Many of those threats are immune to conditions like stun and vertigo, so you can't just cheese it with Psychas either. Odyssey, on the other hand, is all gain. The only way you can play Odyssey suboptimally is by ignoring its mechanics or actively making bad choices. This is the weird bit. The base game now needs you to act clueless or oblivious to provide any challenge if that's what you find enjoyable about your experience. You should still be able to roleplay without making objectively terrible choices, unless the role-playing aim is to get your colony killed. Generic YouTube profile sums this up pretty well with where they sit in terms of difficulty. I find that, for me, Rimworld really has trouble hitting that sweet spot for difficulty. It's either this is a walk in the park, my colonists mow down enemies for recreation, or how the hell am I supposed to defend against this explosive sapper raid? This mech cluster is going to ruin my run. Almost never something in between. If I find the raid to be too much to handle, having that emergency escape gets very tempting, because you can't really outsmart the raids. Rimworld enemy AI is so dumb that they'll just throw themselves onto you with no self-preservation instinct, and since their AI is so dumb, the only way the devs know how to increase difficulty is to armour them up or spawn more of them. You can't really play fast and loose with your colonists since every person is important and their death would cause many problems. You can't really recruit meat fodder for battles, since the difficulty increases for every pawn added, and every new colonist is another mouth to feed and another body that needs clothes and armour, so you have to be fairly picky with who you recruit. But if I decrease the difficulty to make that less of a problem, now we're back to the game being too easy again. You're not really allowed to make a lot of mistakes in combat because things can and will compound against you. You don't have enough DPS to keep up with all the incoming enemies. They will just overrun you due to their no self-preservation instinct. If the AI was a bit smarter and used less numbers as a result, you could actually have vanilla combat that's somewhat interesting instead of greater DPS wins. You could formulate a strategy to try and defeat raids instead of relying on kill boxes. And I also think I'd be much more accepting of a loss if I understood why I lost, and how I can prepare better in the future. Having a center drop pod raid of pirates is really just the game telling you, we decided you're going to lose now, and it doesn't leave much in terms of strategy. I'd fight raids far more often instead of running if they behaved smarter or had less numbers. This again comes back around to that problem previously mentioned in another comment. of the devs not expanding on core systems and providing us with more content instead. Of course, locking an AI update behind a DLC isn't something that's going to be likely. However, we always get the free patch that comes in with a DLC, so something that'd be very nice to see for the next major patch for the game would be some kind of AI overhaul to make them fight more sensibly, to give individual raiders a role in the raid. Certain people could be breachers, certain people could be flankers, some are range support, some are designed to try and tie your ranged up in melee. Just anything to stop it being a Zerg. And a final point to bring up here. Sky's Fury, Generation M, and Edulm have all brought up the same thing here. We're going to focus on Edulm's comment because I think it's the most expansive of them. First off, thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. I agree entirely and actually think the culprit is Rimworld trying to have you have all the options ready for the taking, within a year of starting any run. Out of all mechanics offered by the events and quests, the Gravship is just on another level. It's like handing you a ring of archery and invisibility at the start of Skyrim. I say, solve the large menu problem by taking the problematic stuff off the menu. Look up Progression Gravship on the workshop, it locks the entire quest behind the Spacer era, delaying the issue into late game and letting you play in peace until Gravships make sense to have. Gravship reasonable tech also makes the research more expensive, evening the scale away from Gravship best, hopefully. Beyond that, you can hope to solve it through roleplay, themed playthroughs, etc., like Mr. Samuel Streamer or Rat Knight do. Generation M even went further with that to say the YouTuber Samuel Streamer addresses the issue from time to time whenever his viewers complain about him not playing optimally. Ultimately, he wants to create a story. So again, this is a story generation game, and I'd got it hardwired into my head that I've always played on losing is fun because that's the only way the game could present a challenge to me. Now that I'm being presented with a greater challenge, because I have a very expensive Gravship, the easiest solution to it is to use the Gravship. So, for me, it's time to turn the difficulty down a bit so the raid scaling isn't quite so ridiculous. Add in a mod like CE that makes the smaller numbers still just as dangerous as an absolute Zerg of people coming towards my base, and most importantly, set myself a goal from the start of the run. The footage that's been playing in the background is of an ecological cleanup team I decided to try and run, who land on an extremely polluted tile and try and reverse that pollution. But because they like living in an unpolluted biome, they're very unhappy at the start of the game. So you're dealing with extremely difficult mood swings whilst you try and clean everything up. Then you can live in a utopia. Because it also takes quite a long time to clean a tile up fully, it gives me more investment into staying on that place, rather than just up and running the second a problem appears. Anyway, I hope if you were sharing the same sentiment that I was around these problems with Odyssey, that one, if not more, of these comments has helped or at least guided you in roughly the right direction to start dealing with it. Again, I just want to take a second to thank absolutely everybody who has commented on this video, and those who will comment on the video in the future, I'm sure. As much as some people commented and said that this is a nothing burger or that nope, this is definitely a you-only problem, it's clearly not. There's a lot of people who are feeling something with Odyssey that is unique to that DLC and expansion alone. Many people who have played thousands of hours and have never come up against this roadblock before. I think a lot of it does come down to mods being more customizable in our moderation towards them. If Psycast Expanded is too overpowered, you can lower the experience gain rates. If the Quarry mod is giving you too many resources, you can lower the drops on expensive resources. The game really struggles to help you mitigate just how strong that Gravship is. And until we get more tangible threats thrown its way to stop you from just hitting the launch button, it's kind of all on you. The game isn't going to stop you from using it, so it's an exercise in self-control for now. And a small update about the channel going forwards. I'm going to be covering major mod releases as they come out, which is normally going to be alpha or vanilla expanded stuff. But I'm moving away from covering some of the more random or smaller mods at the moment. I just don't play Rimworld with new mods as much as I used to. Before, when I was streaming the game, I was playing 40 plus hours a week, which gave me a lot more time to dig into a lot more mods in the depth that they needed to be thoroughly explored. Now that I simply don't have as much time to put into the game, I tend to stick with mods that I personally really enjoy. I'll still be looking at the recommendations that people give to me, and if I gel with them, I'll definitely be shining a spotlight on top of them. But for now, I'm gonna try and get into doing some more playthrough focused videos. There was one that I kind of made and again wasn't happy with, and it was that losing is fun issue of flying away all the time. It's what brought this video about. I couldn't make that playthrough interesting because there were so many confrontations that I avoided. I now have a much greater understanding of what I need to do to make for an engaging playthrough. So many thanks to you guys for that. If you would like to see what I'm working on and get insights into any upcoming projects, it's available to view on my Patreon page. All of the posts are free to read, but if you would like, you can support me in producing content like this for just £1 a month. It gets your name in the credits of these videos, and it does help me to stay alive. Wherever you are in the world, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. Take care.